And we're recording. Go figure. Huh. Okay, well, this is my first recording on this. What is this? Blue Yeti Blue X. It is Wednesday, 1:31 p.m. The date is June 30th. And I don't even see the waveforms on my recording. Well, anyway, I'm just going to do a really kind of impromptu, spontaneous recording. And you'll probably hear my wife in the background because this studio is just my kitchen. It's nothing else. Because I tend to go all over the place with stuff and I have a million things going on at once. Why would I focus and try to set something up and do something somewhat professional? Why would I do those things? This is totally besides me. Okay. What the hell am I going to talk about? I have no idea. Because I'm just starting this out and your guess is as good as mine. I feel like I need an outlet to talk about stuff that only maybe one person will ever hear. See, people take it for granted that when you put things out there like on the internet, like on the internet or something, that people will listen. No. That may not happen at all. That'll probably never happen at all. Do I have to adjust my gain? Let's adjust my gain here. This is so unprofessional. You're supposed to have this figured out before you do it, bro. Before you do it. Why are you doing it now, bro? You know what you're doing, bro? Don't know what the hell I'm doing. But yeah. What the hell am I going to talk about? I'm just checking my phone. This is the most exciting... we should talk about, I guess, how the word podcast is sort of like... is it a malapropism by this point? Because, I mean, podcast, if I remember correctly... as I take off my slippers, that's what that was. Because I wear slippers. Podcast, if I remember correctly, that came out when the iPod was already introduced, but it was sort of expanding. And I remember Steve Jobs at one of the Apple conferences was saying that, okay, we're going to have podcasts. And podcasts are at least like radio shows, but for your iPod that you can download, like MP3s or something that you can just download and listen to while you're on your iPod jogging and commuting. Or other things, having sex. Has anybody ever had sex while listening to a podcast? Not a sex podcast? I have not. Why would I do that? Hi, honey, hold on. I gotta put on Joe Rogan. The Joe Rogan experience is happening. The Joe Rogan experience. All right, well, that exhausts that subject. How am I going to hold your attention for the next hour? This is purely a test as to see whether or not this will actually fly. I don't. There's going to be so much cynicism when people listen to this. No, that is if they ever listen to it. Like, this is so bullshit, man. Why are you wasting our time? Why can't you share us important things to know? Like, we're here to learn. Why can't you share with us things we have to learn to make our lives better? This is why we're tech savvy, right? So we can download podcasts that are interesting, and then we can learn something else about the world, and then we can move on, and we can just, be delightful and have a better life, right? Move on from pain, the pains of the world. Well, I don't have anything set up for you right now. Sorry. If you want to hang up your phone or turn off, I guess I'm going to use this for a YouTube video somewhere. I don't know. Just delete it or stop it and then delete it, and then you'll totally forget about it. Because that's what tends to happen. You'll encounter things and then you'll realize, why am I doing this? I can just leave. Isn't that weird how there's some people who just put up with things all the time that grant them like no value except for probably money. Like no value except for money. And yeah, money is helpful, right? Because right now I work at a shitty job that gives me money at least, and I can do this. I can afford to do this stuff. I wonder if you can hear my wife in the background. I guess we'll determine that later. Because she's, of course, working from home. And I took the day off today, so go figure. And I had this Blue Yeti microphone. I bought it. I don't know why I bought it, because I just want to spend the money that I have from working my shitty job. And it's a Blue Yeti X, made by Logitech. I had no idea Logitech owned Blue. I don't know if I would have bought this if I knew Logitech created it. And nothing against Logitech. I have a mouse, like one of their tiny mice. And Logitech is like one of those companies. Logitech is one of those companies that are just so, they're like pop tech companies, and I think they're really like hit or miss in my inexperience. So it's like one of those companies, you walk into like a Radio Shack, if they're still around, and you see like a mouse in a plastic case that's impossible to open, and it's made by Logitech. I'm like, okay, I hope it works. Most of the time it works. And that's another subject too. That is, if you've been using computers for a long time, like I've been using a computer, not the same computer, even though it feels like it, since the 90s. And there's so much equipment that comes and goes. This Blue Yeti X, not that I'm plugging Blue Yeti X, might be one of those devices that just flies by night and just goes away the way of the supposed dodo. Which brings me to another subject. What constitutes true extinction? Isn't that great? We can go from talking about Blue Yeti X and the questioning the viability of Logitech, and go from what quantifies or qualifies as extinction. How do you know? Like, okay, science, modern science, right? Is supposed to be it's certain, right? And it's incertitude. When is it that science hits something 100%? When it says when science says that there's a law. When there's a law, then this is a certitude. The law of thermodynamics, law of gravity, and those are the only two I can in my very humble inexperience I can mention, right? That's when like 100% we can incorporate these into our equations, say scientists, and then we can involve them in our science, in our experiments. But what determines extinction? When you go, does it determine just by going to a local area or environment and just observing something that's not there anymore, or observing something that's not there anymore, or try to detect the lack of presence of something that was once there but now isn't? And with study, you can conclude that there's no more dodos. There's no more, passenger pigeons? There's no more passenger pigeons. And we can safely say 100% certitude that it's extinct. These things are gone. They're done. No more. Like Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum says, would be the words of Michael Crichton as written in the Jurassic Park script. These things had a chance, and nature apparently selected them for extinction, right? I don't know. I don't know if it works that way. I don't like to think that I guess you know what? Maybe it goes back to wanting to or learning when you're growing up all these sciencey things, and trusting them so far that you're feeling like, okay, this is how the world works. We always have these people who, generation after generation for the last couple hundred years at least, they're dedicated to applying some sort of beneficent observation and well intent to how to observe the world and use that the conclusions derived from those observations for beneficent ends, so to speak, right? But is it that the case? I'm not sure. I'm not sure anymore. I don't think it is anymore. I think, well, it depends on where you go, right? Because you can maybe talk about the scientific dictatorship. Like, you can just have people who are so-called scientists now and are big tech people like scientist capitalists, if you want to call them that. They're probably aligned with the upper classes at this point, right? And making them a whole lot of dough. And then over time, they get to decide what's what. They can get to decide. It's, that saying, the golden rule saying, he who has the gold makes the rules. Well, they can probably engineer better gold and engineer better rules so that everybody else who's not them can follow them, right? And I think I struggle with that a little bit, if that's the case. Because, wouldn't it be interesting? All this time, right? Think about it. Like, I was born in the 80s, and since then, if you see the world with at least relatively youthful eyes, right, you can see that you grow up and you try to find your place in it. And, well-meaning older people, adults and so forth, say you can be whatever you want to be. And I guess to a measure of that, that's true. And not to say you can't do anything that you want, or at least within reason. But isn't it fascinating that supposedly the systems sort of become more complex as more industries develop, as of, science discovers new approaches to things, therefore requiring new technicians to deliver those effective approaches, as it were. And who has to train those technicians? Other people. And then whoever falls into that training camp, the choices become maybe more abundant. And then from there, there's more diversity in profession, right? But who oversees all this? Heads of state? Administrators? I'm reading Barack Obama's Promised Land now, and that's his book. And I'm feeling like, I don't know. I started reading Bill Clinton's My Life book like years and years ago, and I have to go back and finish it. I read a lot. And the more I read, and the more you get past like the smarminess and the ego that's involved with these people, I think they're just administrators. They're not really, the leaders that are all cracked up to be. Like it's interesting, like in how Western civilization, right, has sort of developed this audience response to things. Like it's capitalized on theater and show making, like 1,000,000,000%. It's hard to understate this. And then when you have that arena, I don't know if multiplied is the word, but hybridized. Hybridized in the arena of in the setting, like the Videodrome setting. Like you see, like, when you have government, like Clockwork Orange dies. It's like it's broadcast. Like you're talking not just to like a couple of thousand people. It's like millions of people, and they have to simplify things, dumbing things down to such a degree across a vast media spectrum that the language has to be super clear, and there's no room for nuance. There's no room for subtlety. Like the subtleties are meant to be hashed out amongst, in public anyway, amongst the media pundits, as it were, right? But to command billions of people who probably don't like to read or think about too many things, it requires force and it requires clarity. So it's easy to know when somebody's beating you with a stick one way or another. And what makes the third ingredient even that more potent is that you introduce an element of bewilderment or confuddlement or something that people won't recognize as they're being led or misled, as the case may be. And if that's so, then you have a good population that you can lead wherever you want. And then introduce the other notions from, if you're looking at this from the outside, as I don't know if I do, but I fucking study enough, and I think I do look at this kind of stuff from the outside in, at least. Then you have the whole, what the memers of the world call the NPCs, the non-playable characters. I guess go along with these are what these masses are called. Maybe in a derogatory fashion, but that's how it is. And ultimately, where will this all get us? I mean, think of it this way. I mean, when it turned out, you get old enough, and you, hopefully, if I may dare say so, think for yourself, or at least try to think for yourself, or you try to put two different ideas together and try to cobble something that's somewhat original at least. And you still observe the world around you, and you realize that a lot of the bullshit that happens that's called history, when we go back and we read older occurrences of our great-grandparents' time and our grandparents' time, nothing much has changed. Is that my wife coming? My wife is here. I'm recording. Do you want to say hi? I'm recording. To just record. I'm recording. Oh, come here. See. Are you going to go? Oh, really? I'm going to stop. Right back.
Oh, a little kid.
Anyway, so that was a quick hop in. My wife, who had no idea what it is that I was doing, she just showed up. She's like, "What are you doing? Are you making money? Are you making money? It's your day off." Like, I mean, by money, do you mean? And she just walked away. Anywho, I was like waxing bullshit philosophic about one thing or another. And maybe it's just best to move on. Just upload this eventually, and you can tell I'm not even interested in this podcast because podcast, here's that word. Whatever cast, non-cast, YouTube cast, like just a show. So my wife's back on doing her meeting right now. Whatever this is a what cast, a non-cast. Depending on if anybody listens to this, it'll probably be a non-cast. I am not drunk, except drunk on Perrier, because I'm pretentious. Anyway, that's right. I drink my Perrier from the plastic bottle. I'm going to recycle it so I can become a pair of jeans or dental floss. Okay, should I even talk about anything else? Maybe a little bit, something more, and then I'll add this to a video, which may or may not be uploaded eventually. Actually, I can't go back, can I? Because then, can I do that? Hold on. No, I can't. I'm trying to click on my timeline in FCPX, which I guess nobody uses except for me and the people who rate this app. I liked it when their computer programs were called programs. I you know what I miss? I miss the early days, like pre, because the internet is I mean, one would argue that, yeah, it's always been an institution, but now it's like one of the cultural pillars of the earth, right? But back in the 90s, I was nerdy enough, if you can even call it that, to look into computers and know that, like, oh yeah, this is going to go somewhere. This is really cool. You have all these things in one, basically. Back in the 90s, and I think they used to be, it used to be on PBS. It was called, it was like a computer, I was gonna say a computer talk show. Yeah, computers computers are set up to talk to each other. That's like my imitation of of a modem AOL sign on. Was it Computer Time or something like that? There used to be a PBS show about, there's this guy who would interview people in the computer industry, like back in the 90s. So that's how I found out about the internet and modems. I even found out what modem. This is so boring. I even found out what modems were from Ghost Rider. That show Ghost Rider, not the Marvel comic Ghost Rider, but Ghost Rider. Because in one of the shows, in one of the episodes of that show, I think it was like a plot point. Like one of the characters had a modem, and I didn't know what a modem was until, sure enough, they had explained it. Like, okay, I am tech genius. I will make $1 million one day selling 90s modems. Oh Lord. But it's kind of crazy, right? When I look back on it, and I tell this to my wife sometimes, how there was an innocence. Maybe it was like the calm before the storm, or I don't know, like back in the 80s, 90s, where this kind of stuff was present. This tech stuff was certainly present, but it was sort of, dare I say, marginalized or hidden, and then it was sort of engineered to be made cool, like made accessible, consumerized, right? Through things like AOL, or like my first computer was a Tandy computer. Like I had no idea. Like you figure, like, you'd get an IBM or like was it a Dell, or not even, was Dell even a thing back in the early 90s? Hewlett Packard, HP, I don't know, something like that. And I mean, now it's just so, I'll be honest, sometimes I just feel like I'm wary of this. I'm wary of all this tech. I'm sure I'm positive I'm not the only one who feels that way. But, back in the day, maybe because I was younger, there was like this innocence or this kind of newness to it. And it didn't feel as invasive as it does now. It doesn't feel as pervasive, and like it didn't feel like it was injecting itself into the consciousness of the world. It was sort of just there. It was sort of like, hey, this is kind of cool, play with this. It felt like a little toy sometimes. Computers and tech and stuff. And then when the possibilities when the possibilities of this tech became, I don't know, present or more aware, or there, people were just scratching the surface. I think when, what's, this circles back to something I kind of touched on earlier. It's like when you get a little older, and it's that, the multiplication of professions, and, as you go through the school system, and you go to college maybe, and you're poached by companies or startups to want to help engineer change, and they see people who are it's not too similar to, like, I guess, being recruited by a military, right? Where they want people to start young so they can have, they can put in their heads, notions of world travel and glory and possibility, and of course the duty in one's heart to fight for their country, as it were. Or, well, I guess in this case, of, getting poached by corporations, I don't know about the hard part. I think it's just the excitement of, in addition to, like, showing your parents, oh yeah, I can find my way in the world. But the excitement and the acknowledgement, or the, what do you call it? The confirmation, the validation that, oh yeah, this crazy stuff that I know, look, this big company wants me to like, help me, wants me to help them to implement in their latest software to, spy on all these people, or to, as if you click one OK button on an app, it can mean all these different things, and gives the permission for the app to follow you around without your knowledge. I know none of this is new, but I think, it's like being human means having a voice sometimes. And it's ironic because the more I get older, I feel like you get hit, right? You get propagandized with all these, democratic principles, and like, well, you have to use your voice, you have to speak up, you have to, make yourself present, you have to create the change that you want to create, right? But do you, like, I always think about, the end of, not always, but it goes back to the end of, I think, Metal Gear Solid 4, spoiler alert. I'm going to show my age here a little bit, but, or my nerdiness, but I think we were already way past that point. At the very end, one of the main characters just goes, main characters just goes, what's the point of even trying to change the world? We change the world, and here I'm paraphrasing, change the world for what? Why are we trying to make the world a better place? The world is already a great place. It's like, maybe we shouldn't stop changing the world. We should just keep the world the way it is before we make it even worse. And maybe that's what people should try to defend is, I don't know, maybe this is some sort of, quote unquote inner conservatism that I have, where maybe all these crises that, pundits and politicians and tech gurus and people who are become experts, and they have millions of dollars to become experts on things, and they try to, showcase to the world that they have a heart and a conscience. Like, we really should, do something about climate change. We really should do something about, virus breaking out and so forth. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, how much do we have to change? Which leads us, I guess, to the subject of, transhumanism. That could totally be derived from something like a conversation like this, the same line of thinking. Because are human beings just so obsessed with trying to change everything, or trying to make something better, or trying to that at the end it's like, where's the Telos? Where's this going? Where is this going to go? Are we just supposed to, just embrace whatever people just come up with and then just roll with it? Because I guess Western civilization has been engineered to just accept newness, right? Doesn't matter if the cultural implications or medical implications or even natural implications notwithstanding. That when there's a change that comes and people say it's good. How many times has this happened, right? There's a change coming. People say it's good. It's advertised all over the place. It's the best thing. Ends up being shit. Like, not even 20 years later, people look back on it and they're like, what the hell were we thinking? Really, what were we thinking? You know what is the worst feeling? The worst feeling is when, maybe it's because of my conditioning, one of the worst feelings is when you go to the library, if anybody still goes to libraries anymore, and you see a book, right, from the 1970s or 1960s, and it's like, okay, I'm thinking of, Anthony Sutton's The Energy Crisis. I remember when I read that book that, first of all, it was talking about, I think during the Carter administration, how, there was an energy crisis at the time, and the U.S. could just not afford oil, or basically that was sort of what I remember. I'm not saying it's what happened, but that's sort of what I takeaway I got from the book or something. I'm not an expert on this and many other things, but hey, I want to record this non-cast, and here it is, right? To talk about shit. And the worst feeling in the world is reading a book that is obviously dated, that is older. Like, why are you wasting your time reading this stuff? Why are you getting a book that was published in the 1970s that feels like, was meant for a specific audience that is obviously not, you weren't even born yet. What are you doing reading this? Why are you doing? What are you doing this for? And there are millions of books out there that are just like that. We're not the energy crisis per se, but you grab it and you're like, this is not meant for me. This was published in 1955. This is like a cookbook for, like, I don't know, Amish people. It's spiral bound. They sell it in Lancaster. Why would I read this? Am I looking to make something like something like an Amish dish? Or not even that. Something that's a bit more pop, right? Something like a Teen Beat or something from like the 1970s or 80s. Reading about like the Brat Pack. What historical what insight do you get when you read that stuff? And then there's stages to this, right? Because if you're anything like me, you read these books and you're like, oh god, why am I even bothering? Like, why am I getting late or something? And I was reading this before, with my wife, and but at the same time, I wasn't having girlfriends or anything at the time. Why would I have girlfriends? Because I was reading these fucking books. And you read these things and you're like, why am I wasting my time? What's the point of this? That's like the worst feeling in the world. But then you go through a stage where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep reading this because, as the old adage goes, this is probably a proverb in the Bible, in the book of Proverbs, but there's an adage that goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And of course, English hasn't changed much in the last, couple hundred years, or at least, 200 years, at least 300 years. And you can still read books from going way back, 1960s, 1970s notwithstanding. And you get a sense that you read old things that, don't pertain to you, but people still pull this kind of shit. They still kind of like throw, not to say that, the energy crisis book was shit. I don't remember any main takeaways aside from what I'm going to say right now, but it was sort of like, there's always some problem. There's always some political problem. There's always going to be some issue that needs to be addressed, right? And at the end of the day, some legislation may or may not be passed. It's going to be like a persistent political battle for one thing or another. People like Obama will write about the history of healthcare, or no, let's stick with healthcare for now, in their books. Long, torturous history. And unless, further generations, if they have the capacity to go back and look at sort of the history of this, not even just for like a school project, heaven forbid. I mean, God damn, really. Out of just, sheer boredom or curiosity or something, they go back and they, read older books, and they get a sense of how things used to be before things changed, whether because they were engineered or quote unquote natural change, or both. That's even the trickier sort of aspect to consider of all this. That some things could be deliberately changed but appear to be random. Doesn't that blow your mind a little bit? Things appear to be random, but actually it's a deliberate change. And if you want to read more on that, check out Michael E. Hoffman's The Second. Is it Michael E. Hoffman? I gotta look this up now. Hold on a moment. Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. I read that recently. It's just one of those books that if you're into like conspiracy stuff, or, I wouldn't even call it conspiracy stuff, because, I mean, it's just it's just so weird, because it's like, it's so sad, right? That we have this language that is just can be so culturally created, which, is it Michael E. Hoffman? Michael A. Hoffman, hold on. Michael A. Hoffman II, Michael E. Hoffman. I think there's also a Michael E. Hoffman out there. But anyway, check out this book, because it talks about there's a good section in there about culture creation and generating events that appear to be random or deliberately inflicted by I'm gonna put this, not stagecraft, but these guys that are set up like patsies that do these things and they get the blame for, like scapegoats, and then all the luggage that comes along with that. Like okay, right now I'm reading The Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry, and I'm not too far into it, but it's interesting because you read this book, right, and I think it's doing a good job, like sort of laying out the main beats of the Son of Sam case from back in 1977. Which, as an aside, this is 1977, bro. Like 1977. This is like the year of Star Wars. This is happening as Star Wars is getting big, but the two are sort of mutually divorced from each other in conversations. Like you hear about Star Wars coming out in May 1977, right? And then how it just grew and grew and grew and became a blockbuster. Well, as that sort of furor is happening in the world screens, Son of Sam is striking. Well, he started in 1976, granted, but it became fever pitch over time. So by 1977, by eventually when he was supposedly caught, Star Wars was just sort of like becoming the swell that it was. Anyway, so if you read Maury Terry's book and he outlines the maneuvers by the police, the New York PD, about how they sort of covered up stuff, but in the sense that it's like they sort of abbreviated things so that, or ignored other things about how they wanted to really just keep Son of Sam as Son of Sam and not the Sons of Sam, as in like multiple people. But when I was growing up, I didn't hear about that. I heard just one Son of Sam. That was David Berkowitz. He heard a guy's dog talking to him, and he went crazy, and he started killing people. And then that gets fed into the whole notion of serial killers, you see. This goes back to Program to Kill by Dave McGowan and Michael A. Hoffman's Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, because they will set up I guess these cults, these interested groups, quote unquote, they will go ahead and they will set up or engineer or deliberately mislead. It's like deliberately mislead. It's like misleading on top of misleading on top of misleading events and prestidigitations, like deliberate planting of evidence to mislead, not just the police, but the press and the public at large, right? So that by the time you hear about it or you read about it, if you're not there, if you're not doing the groundwork and trying to discover what it is that they're doing, then you can forget it. It's you're not going to get the truth, and you're going to just follow along. Remember when we talked about earlier? What I talked about earlier. Nobody knows if I'm nobody's here but me. About just learning to control the masses, the millions and billions of people. Just keep it simple, and just repeat stuff. Just keep it simple, repeat stuff, and show violence and force if necessary in order to get the sheep to go where you want them to go. Well, same thing with this. The same exact thing, where you are presented with stuff, and unless you're doing the personal work to grasp what are the facts, quote unquote, which facts, maybe facts are just another word for just believe me, right? Facts are just another word for you just listen to what I say and don't question it. It's a fact, like the law of gravity. It's a fact. This is a fact. This happened. It's a fact. Like the Mark Twain quote. Like if you read a newspaper, you're misinformed. If you don't read it, you're uninformed. What are you gonna do? Excuse me. I said some hummus. 221. Jeez. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's hard to just try to run away from the world each day. Increasingly hard. I guess this is basically where I'm going with this. It's increasingly hard to just be left alone. And I usually tell my wife, sometimes we talk, and I say, you know what? Sometimes just people just want to be left alone. It doesn't matter if they're like mentally ill or not. It really doesn't matter. Some people just, want to be left alone. Like they do not care about, the new thing, the genuine innovations that tend to help people or not. Most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's just distractions, right? At the end of the day, you have to be fed, you have to be comfortable, you have to be healthy, you have to be clean in order to just survive the next day, right? And I guess innovations introduced into those things, I guess maybe are the good ones, I'm not sure. But then for every one of those things, there's always things that come up that try to get you to surrender your integrity and your sovereignty. And I don't even know if this radio, whatever, this recordcast, I don't know, is even going to go anywhere, right? But I would hope my intentions are good enough to know that, okay, this is not for advancing the negative, right? I'm not trying to be cynical. It's just one would hope that you have the best intentions for something when you put it out there, and that it goes out and then it just travels and it makes people feel good. My rambling ways. But at the end of the day, there's going to be people who don't care. They're like, you can knock on their door, you can find their cave if they're a hermit, you can go in deepest jungle, present them with an iPod, to listen to a podcast, and they're like, I don't really care. But this can teach you how to build a better hut. I really don't fucking care. Like really, I zero interest in this. Why? How? That's great that you made the effort to try to find me and all this, but at the end of the day, I just don't care. And that's what bothers, I guess, for lack of a better term, the system the most. Because they're energy vampires, I guess, and they try to suck you up. But at the end of the day, there's got to be people. It's like that. It goes back to that Simpsons episode, right? That Treehouse of Horror, where all the logos, the corporate logos are looking, they're wreaking havoc, and Lisa Simpson just goes, don't look. Ironically enough, right? Because they're also corporate logos in their own way. Just don't look. And it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you don't want to give them your energy, you don't want to give them your attention, you don't want to give them your focus. But on the other, it goes back to that other saying, in which all it takes for evil to win is for good men to do nothing. Good men or women, or a million other genders. I don't know. But which one is it going to be? Like, I know in life, I feel like I have to pick my battles, but then I feel like I'm kidding myself, because maybe I should fight more. I don't know. I feel like maybe I should fight more and just get into the thick of it and just, fight. Like, I don't know. Maybe it'll go to the V word. Maybe it'll go to violence. I don't know yet. I don't know. I don't hope not. Who wants to say, like, no, Juan, you're advocating violence? I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. You're raising up violence. You're raising up the tide of hate. The whites are going to listen to you, Juan. The whites. God damn. Oh, Lord. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, maybe this also is maybe this is also a trick and turn. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you read a little bit of history. You go back and you read just a little bit. Like, if you even read a little bit of Herodotus, which is I've done, right? Not that I'm an expert. It's like the theme of that's my catalog. I'm no expert, but let me tell you something. City-states, at least in Greece, they had their integrity, they had their freedoms, at least that's what they believed. So whenever they were invaded, or they would join together to ally together to stop an invading force, to become the invading force, they would, I guess, from what I read and what I remember, they would usually always use the excuse to just have freedom, because we have our freedom, and are these people trying to take it from us, or these people don't have it, so we have to give it to them. Like, we respect we have freedom, we have liberty. That's what they had, according to like Max Steiner translation of Herodotus that I read, right? From like the 1800s or something, which I don't think would be too different from what it is today, which says is something else, if it is. But maybe this whole idea of freedom and privacy, maybe it's another trick. Maybe it's just something else that you feel that, the system, as it were, wants you to fight for. So it can just get you to fight. So it can just absorb your energy in one way or another. So that, if something happens to you in the ultimate scheme of things in regards to karma, dharma, and the cosmos and returning souls, if you even want to go into that from that perspective, or even, I don't know, God, from, I guess, Christian Orthodox perspective, I don't know yet. How do you, I guess what I'm trying to say is, what do you legitimately fight for? What's the good cause? What's in your soul that triggers you, that you just throw down a gauntlet? You're like, fuck this. I'm standing up for myself. This ends right here. This can't do it anymore. And then of course people see you, and they don't know they don't know how to react. So maybe if they're the quote unquote NPCs, they'll be like, what are you doing? You can't do that. You can't do that. This is not in your program. You can't do that. And you're like, fuck all. Yes, it is. I'm making it part of my programming. I'm making it part of my programming right now. It has to happen. Or else, what's the point of even living? Right? Where is the trigger? where do people... Not that they're... Okay. I know it's happening a lot lately, but how much of it is, engineered? The trigger point, people pass land and they uprise, right? How much of that is engineered and how much of that is legitimate? Like, how much of that, assuming it is legitimate, that people really don't care. I think the basic notion of just somebody wanting to stop somebody else that are making fun of them or beating them up or stealing from them, I think once they've had enough of being abused, in other words, then that's when the trigger happens and they can stand up for themselves. That's when it's like, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. No more gaslighting. No more bullshit. No more abuse. Gotta stand up. And it will rock boats. These things just don't come easy. It will rock boats. However, you hearing this in the background? The protocol. When is it legitimate? Is it when you have good intentions? And then at the end of the day, how far can that get you? Like, how many enemies will you make? How many, allies will you win over? I remember, was it Jack Blood? People were like, what are you talking about, bro? Jack Blood from back in the day. I don't know if he's still on the air, actually. It's been a while since I listened to those guys. I think he was on Freeman's show. Talked about how if you're, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. Well, yeah, right? What kind of forces was he talking about? Was he talking about, like, governmental, like, spook forces from one country or another? From some intelligence forces wanting to instigate some sort of revolution so they can, like, leverage that discontent and chaos into something that's more manageable, which they, tend to, always do over and over and over because we're idiots? Or is it something, more occult, dare I say, or even, I don't know, mystical, but it's present, right? What's hard for me? Another thing that's hard for me. That's what she said. Another thing that's hard for me is when you're angry at somebody and this person's done you wrong, and you feel like in order to protect yourself, you have to stay angry at this person. But then the longer it goes on, it just gets so exhausting. You're like, what am I doing this for? This is so stupid. I mean, don't get me wrong. It doesn't happen all the time, but there's some people who are like, oh, God, why? And you don't even have to put the effort. And you're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. But then there's some people that are like, you try to defend yourself one way or another, and you're like, this is so stupid. I'm so pissed at this person. How dare they? They do this, that, and the other. And you get angry. And you just, do this thing where it's like, okay, no more, no contact. Like Thomas Sheridan goes, no contact ever again. And then days go by, and you're like, wait a minute. Am I even still angry? Should I even invest my anger, my energies into being so angry anymore? Days and weeks. Like, why should I keep doing this? I don't know. It's just, when you have mass movements, it's always like, okay, how long can we keep, like, if it's artificial, I wonder how people were like, the controllers are like, okay, how can we keep this going? Like, let's do something else that pisses people off. And then we can, manage it through the press or whatever. Or not even. I mean, it feels like maybe people have been so programmed and culturally conditioned, right, that at this point, they don't need to be controlled by anybody overtly. I mean, they just are operating by themselves. It's like the missing clockmaker, right? You show people what to do, you train it into them, and then over time, you don't even need to be there anymore. You just show up. It's like a guy who owns a franchise or a business, just, gets the hires what he thinks is, or they think is the right people, is on site for maybe most of the week at first, and then over time, gradually he leaves the business running, and then he comes in and he just picks up the checks at the end of the week, and he hasn't even been there, and the company's still thriving. Maybe he'll get some bad apples in there, of course, but stealing from the side or not. But at the end of the day, at the end of the week, he's making money, and he has business that's running. And he doesn't have to train anybody because he has people doing it for him, you see. And they're being paid to train other people. It's like that. I think our culture is like that. Should I even take notes next time? Should I even have an outline? I remember doing a radio show on WSVA. I'm just call it SVA. And my first radio show was about the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, because I was reading Ruled by Secrecy by Jim Marrs at the time. So anyway, I said this would be interesting, and I was so frightened because there was a girl there who worked there at night, and she was like listening to what I thought was like the music playing and from the radio station. So I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be pure talk, my show. It was on like on Monday nights at like 9 like 9 o'clock or something. I don't know what it was. And I was like, okay, I did this thing where I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a persona. I won't say the name of the persona right now because maybe I'll bring him back. I doubt it, but you'll never know. And he's supposed to be the conspiracy guy, right? Like he's going to be the lowdown of what's really going on. And at the time, I read Protocols of the Elders of Zion in the Jim Marrs book. And I listened to Jeff Rents, and then Jeff Rents at the time was all about like the Zionists, right? So I'm like, no, the Zionists. And, reading Protocols of the Elders of Zion, it's interesting when you read a manuscript or something that just nails points that you feel so thoroughly. You're like, well, shit, this is pretty spot on, right? And you sort of just can't help but talk about it. It just seizes your imagination. Well, it doesn't. Okay, the Protocols didn't seize my imagination. It was more like, okay, this is cool. This is interesting because it just describes a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 130 years since it was initially published. Spot on. And I thought, okay, let me talk about it. And of course, once you bring that up, it's like, oh, you're going to be anti-Semite. You're going to be like, anti-Jew and all this shit. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. None of that happened. No. I was like, I was scared. That was the first show, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to just do it. And I was so paranoid by the end, the hour was up, and I had written an outline. This is why I mentioned all this, because I had written an outline for the show, like a script and everything, and I was trying to follow it. And I think I still have that show somewhere. I gave it to a girl once. I gave one copy to a girl and another to my parents. Oh my God. My dad thought I sounded like Rush Limbaugh because I used to say folks all the time. Like, hey, folks. Maybe it's time to wrap it up. I've just gone on and on for almost 2 hours, and it's best to just shut up now. And I am nowhere near as articulate as some people I know who do this. And it's probably, why can't I stick to movies or something? That'll probably be best. I don't know. But hey, you know what? I'm just recording this thing, and we're gonna see what happens. I think as soon as I finish as soon as I stop this, I'm gonna get my wife a library card because I know she wants one, and hopefully we'll read a little bit tonight. I don't know, but as the case may be, I think I'm done with my rant. I should learn to speak closer to the center of the mic. Should I even review this? I don't know. I get so lazy. I just want to push it out there now. So, do you think I want to go back to work at the job that I hate so much? This is maybe one attempt to be express your truth, express your opinions, so that you don't have to go to that job you hate so much. Maybe you can piss enough people off that they can give you they can give you their money. The American way. The march of Western civilization. Nothing like, pissing people off and then, convincing them later to give them your money. Or actually, vice versa. Having them give you their money. But I don't think it's going to happen. So, it is 2:37 p.m. on June 30th, 2021. I have no idea if I'm uploading this. I think I'm just going to just upload it just for the sake of uploading it. Probably on the YouTubes, and call it a day. You know what? One last thing. I used to hang out with these bunch of guys that I grew up with. These people, and they're cool, right? But I used to get so paranoid as to whether or not they'd get me, and I think it sort of came to a head recently. It was sort of just one of those things where I just realized, listen, I have to stop caring so much. Because if I do, it'll just eat me up, and they don't care, and I don't want that. So a lot of this is just an exercise in learning to just be looser and just be more carefree and just shooting the shit and just put it in the breeze and having some fun, because who knows? I mean, life can just change at any time. And it's going to certainly change for us soon. So for my wife and I, maybe I can get her on one of these things soon. She sort of popped in and made a cameo earlier. I told her about the Logitech's Blue Yeti X mic that I have, which is actually it's called the Blackout. But it's so interesting because it's called Blue. So I was expecting something that was bluer than this. Because, language, meanings, these things happen. All right. I think I'm officially wrapping this up. So I'm going to hit stop. I bid you all, as Art Bell used to say, good evening, good morning, as the case may be, across this great land of ours, all over the world, to the cosmos. You never know where this is going to end up. I don't even know if this is going to end up in anybody else's hands. So what should I put over this? Should I put any music or something? I don't think so. All right, that's it. Done. Finite. Kaput. Stop. Stop.